Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Tyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantif Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantif Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantif Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So last time we were discussing verse number 18 in chapter 4. And as I said, it's one of the very important verses. Among the verses of the Gita that Swami Vivekananda quoted, many of his lectures and writings, this is one of the verses that comes again and again. So just to refresh our memory, let me read that verse again. Karmanya karmayav pashyed akarmani cha karmayah sabuddhiman manushyeshu sayuktav kritsna karma kritim. He who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is wise amongst men. He is poised and a performer of all actions. So what I've done today is just to give you a sample of how Swami Vivekananda interprets this and refers to it. Just brought 3 of the passages from his works in which he refers to it. So you can see the same verse, he's put it in a language which is a little bit more accessible than when literally translated as in the text here. So these are Vivekananda's words. When we come to that non-attachment, then we can understand the marvelous mystery of the universe, how it is intense activity and vibration, and at the same time, intensest peace and calm, how it is work every moment and rest every moment. That is the mystery of the universe, the impersonal and personal in one, the infinite and finite in one. Then we shall find the secret. And now he quotes the verse. He who finds in the midst of intense activity the greatest rest, and in the midst of the greatest rest, intense activity, he has become a yogi. In another place again, Vivekananda says, he who sees in the midst of intense activity, intense calm, and in the midst of intensest peace, he is intensely active, is wise indeed. This is the question. With every sense and every organ active, have you that tremendous peace so that nothing can disturb you? Standing on Market Street, waiting for the car with all the rush going on around you, are you in meditation, calm and peaceful? In the cave, are you intensely active there with all quiet about you? If you are a yogi, otherwise not. And yet another place, everything goes to show that this philosophy must be very practical. And later on, when we come to the Bhagavad Gita, most of you perhaps have read it. It is the best commentary we have on the Vedanta philosophy. Curiously enough, the scene is laid on the battlefield, where Krishna teaches this philosophy to Arjuna. And the doctrine which stands out luminously in every page of the Gita is intense activity, but in the midst of it, eternal calmness. This is the secret of work, to attain which is the goal of the Vedanta. Inactivity, as we understand it in the sense of passivity, certainly cannot be the goal. Were it so, then the walls around us would be the most intelligent. They are inactive. Clods of earth, stumps of trees would be the greatest sages in the world. They are inactive. Nor does inactivity become activity when it is combined with passion. Real activity, which is the goal of Vedanta, is combined with eternal calmness, the calmness which cannot be ruffled, the balance of mind which is never disturbed, whatever happens. And we all know from our experience in life that that is the best attitude for work. So this is how he has referred to this verse again and again. So very briefly again, who is a wise person? According to this verse, a person who sees inactivity where there is activity and activity where there is inactivity is wise. And I said this verse is confusing because how do we define wisdom? How do we define knowledge? And one way of defining that would be one who sees things as they are, one who sees things clearly. And seeing things clearly would mean where there is activity, you see activity. Where there is inactivity, you see inactivity. Then you are wise. But this verse is saying where there is activity, you see inactivity. So it's just the opposite really. So that is the dilemma. And this afternoon when I was reflecting a little bit on this verse, one imagery came to my mind. Now this is not a very accurate way to put it, but this will give you some sense of it. I thought about, nowadays we are using solar power in many places. So let's say there is some machine or some fans and things like that are, instead of using electricity generated through many different ways, we're using solar power to light a house and to use fans and so on. Now, if the sun could speak, if the sun were a person, and if the sun, clearly, it's solar power that is making things move. So the sun could either say, I'm doing all this, I'm making it all move. And which would not be wrong in some sense, because really it is the solar power, it's the sun's power which is making it do. So sun would be justified in saying, I am doing all this. But if the sun read a little bit of Vedanta, if the sun began to reflect a little bit, the sun might say, am I really doing anything? I'm just not doing, I'm just being the sun, that's all. But I'm just being myself. But it's the power of the sun which is really making all these things move. So the activity is really in the moving fan, not in the sun. The sun is not doing anything. This is a kind of an example. Now, put yourself, by your real self, pure consciousness, the Atman, in the form of the sun. And the body, mind, ego are all these machines that are working. Now, just as the sun doesn't have to do anything, the sun has to just be the sun. Just the presence of the sun makes everything move through solar power. Exactly in the same way, just the presence of the consciousness makes all these material entities, the body, mind, ego, move. The consciousness is not doing anything, it's just being itself. And we are that, each one of us is that consciousness. Each one of us is that spirit. Each one of us is that Atman. And like the deluded son, we are saying, I'm reading, I'm doing. But if now I want to be wise and I look a little deeply and say, I'm not really doing anything. The act of reading, the act of holding the book is being done by the hands. For the reading, these eyes and the brain centers and whatever, all these things which are engaged in a particular activity, they are not me. So far, is it okay? So now what this verse says is this. Where normally people see activity, in a sense, I'm doing, a wise person says, I'm not doing anything. where ignorant people see, oh, this is just a material object. It's not alive. It's there really all activities taking place. So now you see, so it is really, the person is wise because you are really seeing activity where there is really activity. You are really seeing inactivity where there is really inactivity. Now, Swami Vivekananda's quote that I mentioned, he says, and I briefly referred to it last time, was at present in our lives, activity and rest are separated. When we are working, we are working. And that is why then we go home and we take rest. Or on we could say, working days as opposed to weekends, etc., or a vacation when I rest. So at present in our lives, work and rest have gotten separated. Now this duality has to end. And what this verse points out, and what Vivekananda stresses, is that if we become yogis, in other words, if we become truly wise, we will see we will not have to separate out work and rest like we are doing now, that we can be intensely working every moment and be completely at rest every moment. So both of these things can happen simultaneously if we learn to look properly and look in the right place for the right thing. So what happens? So even when we are busy working, I can say, there's work, but the real me, I'm just being the witness. I'm just there like the sun. But all these, my body, mind, my eyes, my ears, all of them are intensely busy, which is wonderful. So that doesn't mean, therefore, that exhaustion won't occur. It'll occur. The body, mind, they're all machines, kind of machine. They're parts of the material world. After some time, they're going to need rest, which is fine. But we get more tired than we should, because not only are the body and mind working, but my misperception makes me feel I am working. My misperception makes me feel that I am tired. This misperception is what increases my exhaustion. So it's not like an enlightened being won't feel tired. As long as the enlightened being is operating through a body and mind, and the body and mind are material entities, that exhaustion will occur. But it will not occur to the extent it occurs in the rest of us. Last time we didn't have much time to discuss this, but I would like to now give you a chance to express whether your comments or thoughts or questions on this verse. Because if this verse is more or less clear, then it will become much more easier when we move to the following verses. So the idea in this verse, is it clear to you? If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Swamiji, to try to remember this and think about it and observe it, if I think I can materialize the concept of trying to feel rest in activity, but to think the other way, how do you feel activity in rest?
How do you see?
Is there an example where we can think of activity in rest? How do you see activity in rest?
No, the activity in the rest is just, as I said last time I mentioned, is that where there is, it's not me who is lifting this book, it's this hand that is lifting this book. So the moment when I say I am lifting it, then really what is the hand doing? So I'm not really attributing activity where there is activity. So when I'm saying I am lifting it, I am ignoring the activity of the hand and saying the hand is not doing anything. So actually the two are connected. It's not like seeing activity in activity is one and the other. That's not. The moment I see begin to see things clearly, I will see both fall into play. They are both connected. Yeah. Anything?
We were reading from the Vachanamritam. I don't know if that can be applied here. Sri Ramakrishna gives an analogy of buttermilk and butter. He tells that if you're able to identify that buttermilk comes from butter, and then once you have reached a state, then he says that it's the same butter that is in the buttermilk. Can that be kind of can be applied to this analogy of having?
No, it's not clear what.
No. I think he gives an analogy at some point about buttermilk and butter. He says that if you're able to see butter in the buttermilk, and then once you cross a phase wherein you're able to see that it's the same butter that is in the buttermilk also. Can that be applied to this in any way?
I'm not able to still make the connection.
Even I was not able to.
Okay, yeah, you read it one. Next time you can mention it. All right, yeah. Vikram, yeah.
Swami, when you say that it's connected, the inactivity and the activity, so is it connected in a way that we can see that the true I is always either one or the other, always inactive or always active?
No. The true I is always inactive. So a misperception would be seeing what is really inactive as active. So all activities that we attribute to ourselves, and that's what really we do that probably all the time. I am doing something. I'm doing something or the other. All of us are doing something or the other. Now, whether it's really me who is doing it, the reason, you see, it's not rocket science. I mean, it's pretty simple. The real I, the spirit, is infinite. It doesn't have any parts. It doesn't have any instruments. For any activity to take place, you will need some motivation to do it. You will need some instruments to do it. You will need some parts to put it together. And this is just infinite being who has no want, no need, nothing. So there is no action possible or necessary in the Atman. And then the trick is this. There is no action possible in purely material entities either. Because if it were, then this table and chair would start jumping and dancing. They don't. So in material entities, no activity is possible. In the spirit, no activity is possible also. And yet, there is activity everywhere. So why does this activity even become possible? You see the problem? In spirit, there is no activity. In material entities or just material, there is no activity. So the activity occurs only when the spirit and matter apparently come together. That apparently is a very key term here. Apparently come together. The spirit identifies with matter, or to put it this way, the spirit forgets I am the spirit and begins to look upon matter as myself. It is this confusion and forgetfulness of one's identity that makes activity possible. So, matter by itself inactive, spirit by itself inactive. A deluded spirit attached to matter is apparently active. That's the situation. And then for the solution is simply stop getting deluded. There's nothing else to be done. Just look at things clearly, recognize the truth, and you are free. Yeah. Go ahead, Pramod. Oh, both are Pramod. No. All right. Okay. So, first you. Okay.
So seeing inactivity in activity, that makes sense based on the example you gave. When you think that I'm not doing it, I'm just being done. That makes sense. But the other way around, seeing activity in inactivity, I don't know how would that.
Yeah, as I said, see, when I say now, I am lifting this book, where is the activity? I'm the one who is lifting this book, right? So I am seeing activity in me. But what is really lifting this book? The hand. But I'm not seeing activity in the hand. Because if I were seeing activity in my hand, I wouldn't say it, but I would know the hand is lifting the book. I wouldn't feel I am lifting the book. So where the actual work is, who is actually doing the work, I'm not seeing any work there, because otherwise I'm not even noticing it, because I'm saying I'm doing it. So where there is activity, I'm seeing inactivity in the sense I'm not recognizing it. And this Atman, which is not doing anything, I'm imputing activity to the Atman in saying I'm lifting the book, whereas it is the hand that is lifting the book. Does that make sense now? Yeah. So everything that we say and do in life, that's all really from the Vedantic standpoint, it's a delusion. Everything is done by the body-mind. And the body-mind are as much a part of this vast created universe as everything else. And this sense of I that attaches us to the body and mind is what the ego is. It is the sense of I that binds us to matter. It is a sense of I that creates bondage. And freedom really means freeing. I'm saying, no, this is not me. I'm infinite. I'm eternal. So it's interesting that logically it doesn't make sense, but that's exactly what happened. That we are really infinite beings, pure, free, and perfect. And like, there can be nothing better than that. And now we have become finite, we have become mortal, we have become limited, we have just filled with anxiety, worries, existential angst, so to speak. And it is in our hands to go back to being who we are. So we were in a much better shape. It's like, it's like you have everything in life, and then you kind of voluntarily give that up and just embrace a state by which you are short of everything and you are in pain and misery. And it's of our own doing. No one has put us there. And the solution to that is simply to know that, oh, I'm not seeing things clearly. So we have no one. There is one poem Swami Vivekananda wrote, "No one but me to blame." In one of his other poems called "The Song of the Sannyasin," he says, it's a beautiful line. He said, "Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. Then let go thy hold, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om." So it's like we are being dragged, which is kind of sometimes you see in some if you I don't know, nowadays probably they may not do, it's very rare, but in earlier days, if you wanted to catch hold of get some enemy or something, or in some Western cowboy movies, they'll tie somebody up and then drag them along. And that's a very painful thing. And you can't do, you're helpless. But you're not so helpless if you're not really tied to it, that you are holding the rope and you are being dragged. And all that you have to do is just let go of it. Our problem is that we are tightly holding onto that rope, and then we are crying, we are suffering, we are in deep pain, and saying, "Oh Lord, please come and save us." And the Lord says, "Let go, let go." We won't let go. That's the problem. See, when we put it in this way, it seems so silly that why do we want to be mortal, ordinary human beings when at this very moment we can be free divine beings? There is nothing to be done. Actually, the real thing is we have to stop doing. We have to start being who we are. And that's why this is one of the very key verses. Let's read verse number 19. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Swami Tyagananda mentioned the state of a sage in a cave who is in fact inactive but can be active.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the activity there? Like according to my understanding.
The thing is this: if I may be sitting in a cave, and if I'm still thinking about life back at home, then I'm still active.
So the thoughts are the activity.
Yeah, it's a mental activity. So that's why sometimes people go on vacations to some remote areas, and they're always on their cell phones, or they carry some checking their emails. So I mean, apparently you are inactive, but still you're still busy, and therefore when you come back, you don't feel you had much rest. You see, that's the thing. Or look at it this way: sometimes even when we sleep, how often when we get up in the morning, we feel completely rested? We don't. And we might have slept for 8 hours, 9 hours. So apparently we have been completely at rest. But if most of the time I'm asleep, if I've been seeing dreams, and especially if they are nightmares, I'm not going to feel rested. So apparently I'm resting, but the mind is jumping all the time. So even in sleep, we really don't get complete rest. The Swami Vivekananda in one place mentioned, he says that meditation, a good meditation, the rest that we get in meditation is much more than the rest in sleep. And that's why people who meditate regularly and meditate well, and that's important, they don't need that much sleep. In fact, there is one couplet in Bengali which goes something like this, that a yogi is saying, I have put sleep to sleep. So you don't feel the need for sleep when you get that rest in deep meditation. That's the idea. Is that okay? Yeah. Verse 19. Yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanagni dagdha karmanam tamahuh panditam buddhaha. He whose actions are all free from the hankering for desires, whose actions have been burnt by the fire of knowledge, him the wise call a sage. Again, so this is the continuation of the idea that we have seen, that when do we become a sage? When do we become a wise person? When actions are free from the hankering for desires. And we have seen how it's desires that tie us. It is desires that bind us. If we can work without desire, then our heart becomes pure, because there is no bondage involved there. And if the heart becomes pure, then I'm able to see things clearly. And if I'm able to see things clearly, then I will know exactly where there is activity, where there is inactivity. I'll be able to see exactly that when I say I'm not this cage of body, mind, bone, and flesh and blood. I'm really the spirit. So when we first think about it this way, when we say I, right now most of us are just thinking about this, just what we see in a mirror, or what is going on inside our heads. But the more we are able to minimize our desires and try as much as possible to work without hankering for the results, then we begin to see things more clearly, because our heart then becomes pure. And that clarity then helps us see who we really are. It progressively removes our bondage and makes us more and more free. That's the idea. Whose actions have been burnt by the fire of knowledge. And this example will come later in the Gita also, that just as fire burns fuel, wood for instance, to ashes, it's knowledge that burns all karma to ashes. And to put it briefly, it's like this. Every thought that we think, every physical activity that we do, because all of it is being done with the idea that I am thinking, I am doing, all of it then becomes my activity. Because I am the doer of those actions. I become the agent of those actions. These are the actions. And every action then will have a result. So karma, karma phala. Work, fruits of work. And I am the doer of work. So I do work. Let's say I work hard into the garden, and it gives me joy, because I have worked in the garden with the sense that I have done it, and I get the result of that joy also. Sometimes when I work and the things don't turn out well, then it makes me sad, and which is bit what our lives are. It's just a bunch of successes and failures, alternately things making us happy and things making us miserable. And our entire life can pass this way, just going back and forth. Happiness, sorrow, happiness, sorrow, happiness, sorrow, with different intensity. And we always do more work than we are able to experience the result of. So it's everything at the end of the day is not balanced out. In other words, let's say if you earn more money than you can spend, then you're always going to have surplus, which is kind of nice if we are just talking in terms of dollars. But what about karma money? So doing activity is, you could think in terms of earning karma dollars, and experiencing the results of it in terms of joy or sorrow. The dollars can be spent either through experience joy or through sorrow. So all the joy and sorrow that we experience in life, we are spending our karma dollars, and every action, physical and mental, that we do, we are earning karma dollars. Now the problem is that we are always earning more than we can spend. So at the end of the life, we always have a surplus, which is why then we have to take birth again, because that surplus has to be spent. You cannot leave as long as you have surplus. You have to use it up. Now, if every life we are going to earn more than we can spend, it's never going to end. And we cannot say, okay, this life, I won't do any action at all. I will just experience it. You cannot. That's what we saw earlier. Krishna says, even for a moment, we cannot stop doing work. So that's the dilemma. That's the difficulty. We cannot exhaust our karma merely through experiencing the results. The only way we can do it is to burn it up. It's just like all the stuff that you have bought over the years. And if you say, I'm going to use each and every one of those things, you're never going to be able to use it. At some point, you'll have to find a way, just get a dumpster and just trash the whole thing. I wish we could do something with all the accumulated karma. The only way it can be done is through knowledge. Now, how does knowledge, it's a great imagery. Just like fire burns wood to ashes, knowledge burns all karma to ashes. But I mean, what does knowledge really do? I mean, karma is not some kind of a entity, and knowledge is not some kind of a fire and going to, it's only an imagery. So what does it really mean that knowledge burns karma? What is among the things that are needed for any action to do, or the results of the action to be experienced? What is the most important entity necessary to do an action or to experience the results of action? Yeah, more or less, that's it. In order to do something, you need a doer, right? If there is no doer, it's like some work has to be done, there has to be someone to do it. It just won't happen by itself. So in order for work to happen, there has to be someone doing it. In order to experience the result of work, which is basically sukha or dukkha, joy or sorrow, there has to be someone to experience it. So you need a doer and you need an experiencer. Without a doer, there is no doing. Without the experiencer, there is no experience. I mean, it's so obvious really, but it's good to spell it out. So you need a doer and you need an experiencer. Right now, that's what, as you said, that the ego is kind of, does a dual function. Ego as a doer, ego makes me think, I'm doing this, I'm thinking, I'm reading, I'm writing, I'm blah, blah, blah. So ego as a doer. And then, oh, I'm happy, I'm miserable, I'm enjoying it, I am suffering. So ego becomes the doorway to the experience also. Now what does knowledge mean here? Simply this: you are not the doer, you are not the experiencer. So knowledge means it really eliminates the doer and eliminates the experiencer. And if the doer is eliminated, there is no doing. If the experiencer is eliminated, there is no experiencing. And so that is what is meant by karma being burnt. It's not really karma that is burnt, it is the doer or the experiencer who is, it's like a little bit like this. Like there's a puppet show, and there is the principal character in that puppet show. Now that whole drama will continue as long as that principal character is there. Now if someone just removes that puppet from that cannot continue because the main character is out. Exactly in the same way, in the drama of our own personal lives. I never thought of that, just now. Sometime when you're speaking, this kind of all weird images will come. So in the drama of our life, this drama cannot continue as long if the doer and the experience are absent. And how do we know this? Actually, in deep sleep, the doer is absent. When we are fast asleep, there is no doer there, and therefore no action. You are not experiencing, you are incapable of doing any activity in deep sleep. You are also incapable of experiencing any anxiety and stress in deep sleep. The doer and the experiencer, almost. There is a part of experiencer there, but we won't go into that. So just as the world as we see is absent in deep sleep, the doer and the experience are sort of eliminated, but that's only for a temporary. It's not due to knowledge, just due to exhaustion. Now, that experience, which we all have in deep sleep, when the ego becomes non-functional, and in deep sleep, we experience intense rest and intense calmness. That same experience can be recreated while we are awake while we are right in the din and bustle of life, while we are standing, as Vivekananda said, on Market Street. That, I think that was probably given in New York City, somewhere in the Times Square area. That sometimes that quote is often referred to. So while we are right in the middle of all activity, deep down is the awareness, I'm not the doer, I'm not the experiencer. And you are completely at rest. You can experience that deep peace and contentment and joy that we experience in deep sleep, even as we go about our day-to-day activities. So that is what is meant here. He whose actions are all free from the hankering for desire, whose actions have been burnt by the fire of knowledge. So now you understand, it's not the actions that are burnt, it is the doer of actions and the experiencer of their results who is eliminated through knowledge. That is what is burning of action. Vikram, wanted to say something?
Yes, Swami, so when you were talking about karma dollars, so the true I has no action, so has no karma. So is one way to get out of the cycle of the never-ending karma, debt or surplus, to realize that you are the true I, in which case there's no action?
See, every night when we are fast asleep, we are already out of the karma cycle. In deep sleep, you're not part of anything. I mean, it's only, you see, even science, if we say, well, seeing is believing, only if I see it, I will believe it. That's what sometimes is kind of a layman's understanding of science as we understand it. But science, material science is not very consistent also in many ways. Because if I can believe something only when I actually see it, I'm not going to accept anything on faith. I'm not going to accept anything on someone else's testimony. Then we need to ask, what is the status of the world when I'm fast asleep? Because when I'm fast asleep, I'm not experiencing the world. How do I even know that the world exists when I'm fast asleep? But if you ask this question to most scientists, they will say, I don't think they're going to like the idea to say the world status is undetermined when you're asleep. But you're not really experiencing it. It's only through the inference, oh, well, when I was asleep, some other people were awake and they saw the world. That's the only way you know it. But otherwise, you don't have any direct experience of it. So, according to Vedanta, in the state of deep sleep, you're already free from the law of karma. But as we know, the state of deep sleep is not within our control. We come out of it whether we like it or not. And so we are not really free from the law of karma. That's the idea. Does that make sense? So let's read one more verse. Verse number 20. Tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya trupto nirashrayah karmanyabhipravrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Renouncing the attachment for action and its fruit, ever contented and without any refuge, he does not do anything, even though engaged in action. Renouncing the attachment for action, easy, and its fruit, not desiring its result, ever contented. That's what really brings contentment. It's the attachment to work and the attachment to result which robs me of my contentment. So we all should continue. That doesn't mean don't do anything in life. Continue doing what is right. Continue doing what is good without getting caught in that activity, without hankering for the results of that activity. So we all should do what is right, what is good. In simple terms, they say follow dharma, but without any desire for personal gain, personal gain. I mean, the thing is this, the desire, again, desire is possible. I mean, what do we desire in life? We have seen this before. We only desire what we lack. We only desire what we need. Now, the more I try to remind myself I'm the infinite one, then it actually goes contrary to saying, oh, I would like to have this, I would like to have that, I need this. So the moment I say I need this, I want this, it's an admission of the fact I'm not really that infinite, that there are things I lack. And so until I get that thing, I'm not going to be happy. Which is what makes all activity, all projects, all plans really, that's what happens in our life. So here what the idea is, continue doing what is good, continue doing what is right, but don't have attachment for the action as results, because only then, I mean, we do everything to be happy. And now what they are saying is, well, if you want to be happy, this is the way to be happy. That's the idea. Ever contented, that's what makes ever contentment. You see, the joy that we think we will get from entities outside is always will be limited, will be finite. And we know that from our own lives. There are things which make us very happy, but there is nothing in this world which makes us permanently happy. There are things which make us happy, and after some time we lose interest in it, and then we need some other game to excite us. And I mean, that's the whole thing with all now new game, new thing, new products, new kinds of food, because we so quickly get bored with things, and so we always want new things. And so complete contentment, complete fulfillment is not possible, because all the entities we are dealing with in the world are limited entities. And a limited thing can only bring limited joy. You cannot get infinite joy from finite things. You can get infinite joy only from infinite things. And there is only one entity which is infinite, that is yourself. So, Atma Triptaha, being content in oneself, that's the idea. Yep.
This might be a simplistic question, but then why do anything at all?
I think that's a good question. It's not simplistic. And the answer is, we really don't have to. But is it possible not to do anything? That's the difficulty. If it were possible not to do anything, well, you are enlightened. I mean, the most we can do is sit in a corner and say, okay, I'm not doing anything. But we cannot stop activity. The mind will still be jumping. Thoughts will still be coming. Hopes, fears, it will still be coming. So, logically, your question makes sense, but practically, we cannot do nothing. We always have to be doing something. And the idea is, well, if we have to be doing something, then let's do something. Let's do what is right. Let's do what is good. The only way beyond activity is through activity. And if we do that work in a proper way, that work itself will get us out of the mess. If we do the work not in a proper way, then we get more entangled into it.
Swamiji, I had a question in mind, but the words you used just now, I think, relate to it more. You said the only way out of activity is through activity. But you also said that something finite cannot bring you infinite joy. So I read in Swami Vivekananda's verse that he says that thought itself is finite in nature.
Correct.
So how can you use a finite thought to think that you are infinite?
Right. Good question. So the finite thought will not give you the infinite. The finite thought will remove the finite ignorance that it has. So the infinite is not to be got because we are already the infinite. So there is, it's not like the infinite is somewhere far away and I must reach that infinite. It's not. I'm right now, even at this very moment, we are already the infinite. So there is nothing to be done about it. But that infinite is now covered. And symbolically, we can speak about as a kind of a veil or an ignorance or a curtain has come over that infinite, and which is why I'm not able to see that infinite. Now I have to remove the curtain. I don't have to become the infinite because I'm already the infinite. So removing that curtain, the curtain itself is not infinite. So therefore it's this finite things will help to remove the finite curtain. It's like the sun. The sun is so huge, but the sun gets covered by cloud, and the cloud may be so small, and yet the cloud is able to cover the sun in spite of it not being as big as the sun. And in spite of the cloud, we still get sunlight, but not fully. In the same way, right now, the consciousness that we have is a consciousness reflected of our own true nature. But it's not like a full consciousness, because that consciousness is covered by the cloud of my ignorance. And when that cloud of my ignorance goes away, then that consciousness shines itself fully. And so, good question therefore. So it's finite activity, finite thinking will help to remove the finite obstacles and reveal the infinite. Is that okay? So there is something more to be discussed in this verse. So when we meet next time, we will begin with verse 20 again. Any other thoughts before we close today? Yeah, Vikram?
You said when we were talking about material objects, you said the true material object can be inactive.
It is.
It is inactive. So when we are in deep sleep, is our body like a true material object when it's inactive?
Almost. I mean, you're still breathing. Yeah, I mean, a person who is fast asleep and pretty looks inert from a distance, isn't it? Yeah, it is. A person who is in coma also, for that matter. Yeah. Yeah.
And you said when you were explaining that it is only when a spirit meets an inactive object that the illusion of activity happens. And you used a word that you said apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
Why?
Because the spirit alone exists. There is really no material entity. So you cannot meet something which is not there. You cannot be in proximity of something which is not there. So I mean, ultimately, it's all an imagination, really. Yeah. So we kind of we create a ghost and then are terrified by it, although there is nothing there. That's the idea. Yeah. You want to?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the doer and the experiencer, and if we do our work as an offering to God, how do we then experience the joy of working for God? I mean, does that become intense?
So when we do it as an offering to God, we are getting the ego out of it, that I'm not doing it for myself. And so once the ego goes out of the picture, then that work doesn't bind me, because I'm not invested into it the way I would be if I'm doing it for my own self. Now that kind of activity, instead of then yielding me the joy or sorrow it would have otherwise yielded, in fact, it gives me a different result. And that result is purification of the heart. So when my heart becomes pure, I begin to see things more clearly. So right now, we all have an eye problem, so to say. Eye, both this eye and this eye. So when we begin to see things clearly, then we are exactly able to see where there is activity and where there is no activity. Then I'm able to see that when I say, I am doing, it's not the real I. It's not really me. It's my body and mind. Even when I celebrate my birthday, then I know, well, it's not really my birthday. It's this body's birthday. Now, we don't have to say that. I mean, if you say that to your friends who don't know Vedanta, they will think there's something wrong with you. So you don't have to put it into words. It kind of sounds odd. It's my body's birthday. No one says like that. And you don't have to say it. But deep down, you know, it's not me. It's almost like, oh, I got this computer 10 years ago. It's the 10th birthday of my computer. which is fine. You know, or your car. Some people say, "Look, no, I got this car 15 years ago. It's done such a great job," and you love your car, which is great. But you know you are not your car, right? So exactly in the same way, celebrating and the day this body came into being is wonderful. But deep down you should know it's not me. Yeah, that's the idea. So a lot of this Vedantic thinking is completely internal. You don't have to, I mean, you can still discuss it with friends who are familiar or interested and, you know, in the Vedanta community, that is fine. But if you say all this in front of someone who has no background at all, yeah, I don't think it's going to help. Yeah.
Do you think that linguistics play into it? You know, the fact that in this culture, I is such an important word, and could there be a way of referring to yourself in a different way?
Well, I mean, there were some people in India, some yogis, or there was one monk once came to Dakshineshwar in Ramakrishna's time, and he used to refer to the body as this. This is hungry, this wants to rest. And it's just kind of odd. But and see, now we're already laughing. So and you can imagine what they must have thought 100 years ago. So my point is, there is no harm in using the word I, which is okay, which is, you know, try to be normal. But deep down, just know what that I really refers to. That's the idea. Yeah, because, you know, if you start saying this and then someone says, oh, you've been going to the Vedanta Society and this is what... Okay, so we will continue this discussion next time. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna in Holy Pada again and again. So our subject on Sunday will be the power of ignorance. So it will be more or less something that we have been discussing now about this ignorance about our true self, what it can do. So we know about the power of knowledge, but before we deal with the power of knowledge, it's good to know also the power of ignorance, that what we are up against. So that will be the idea, topic on Sunday, the power of ignorance. Next Wednesday, we will continue with this study, and Tuesday and Saturday, our meditation will also continue as usual. So you're welcome for these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-living being become manifest unto us. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May the Divine bless us all and fill our hearts with infinite grace and love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.